Hi everyone, welcome, and yeah, you've probably seen the video on full boost now, so time to debrief what happened on the weekend. Right, so obviously you would have seen the video now on full boost. If you haven't, can't believe you haven't seen it already, stop this video, go watch it now and come back, and then we can debrief exactly what happened. But I mean, it was successful, I guess, in terms of it. You know, it didn't fall apart, and it went sort of straight, and we got some data, so that's good. But yeah, it was, I guess, a little bit disappointing in terms of, it's just very hot, and it's just very hard to do sort of a lot of stuff yourself and think about stuff in hindsight. You look back and go, oh, maybe I should have tried this on that pass or this and that. But you would have seen the issues we had with getting it up on the converter after that first pass, and that sort of, I spent the next 2 or 3 passes basically trying to make sure we could sort that out just to get it up on the 2-step for the day. So you know, I wasn't really looking at a heap of the other data other than you know, checking, make sure their fuel ratio was sort of right and stuff like that. Really didn't even bother looking at the plugs or changing them for that matter, filling it with the fuel. You know, the catch can had nothing in it, which was great. But yeah, now it's time to have a look at everything and see how it all went. All right, so there it is. So obviously one of the first things you can see is that has absolutely annihilated the bumper. So what I'm going to do is, I was just going to do a little trim ring, but obviously it needs a hell of a lot more than just a trim ring. So I'm probably going to extend this out another, maybe at least 2 or 3 inches, and then just do a little, like a almost like a teardrop sort of here and that, and yeah, that'll protect that. That's something that I assumed may have happened, and it has. So not much you can really do about that. If I didn't want the dump pipe all the way out here and that, so you walk past and burn your leg every time. So whatever, that happened. Took the pan off. That bolt come out as well, and I have no idea where that's from. I have to do some more recon on finding out where the hell that bolt would have come from, because that's a 10 mil bolt, so it's pretty beefy. So, but I mean, you know, that's the thing. There could be bolts and stuff in the rails that have been there forever and a day, and they've never really been touched, and all the vibration and the movement of the G-forces in the car moving now is shaking a bit of this stuff out, so who knows. So pretty much everything in the engine bay was fine. We can go over the only things that we had an issue with. So we'll go over the data in every rate and every pass basically shortly, but what you might have seen mentioned on full boost was that we had a problem with the boost control later on, and that was basically how the boost, how you make more boost in the car is you've got a boost controller with an increase and decrease solenoid that's plumbed in with pressure to the top of the wastegate. You have normal boost pressure from the turbo water in the bottom of the wastegate, so you've got the spring also inside it, so the boost pressure on the bottom port pushes the diaphragm up, and based on whatever the spring pressure is, that's when it opens, which is 14 psi that's in there at the moment. What the boost controller does is then it pushes pressure back down on the top to raise the boost. So if you put, say, you know, 10 pounds, you know, on the top, and you've got 14 pound spring, you might make like 24 or something like that. So yeah, what we were seeing is that the sensor that was on the top of the wastegate, which is what reads to know how much pressure's on there to push down, started oscillating, and I assumed it was just a sensor had gone bad, because that stuff happens. Talk to any racers, you know, sensors fail. That's pretty common. But what I did is I rigged up this little device here, which is basically an air line in, and I pressure the setup to whatever, and then this hose goes to the, well, this is on the bottom port, but I went to the top port, and what I found is that if I just take this off here, just swivel it up here, you can see, so this is where your normal manifold boost, so to speak, will go in, and this is the port where the boost from the boost controller goes in, and then the other port on the other one, which is over here, this has got two, so this one goes off to the sensor. And what I found when I tested these wastegates was it was leaking from the bottom here. So what I assumed, what happened is when I, this is the spanner to do them up, and it goes just on here, and you reef on it, and you go, dunk, and I had done it up to what I thought was obviously pretty tight. Now, this is like a aluminium thread, so I didn't want to, you know, sometimes aluminium threads, you know, if you absolutely kill it, you could damage the thread or something. So I think once it's got what I thought was tight, I didn't try to keep on over tightening just in case it stripped the thread or something like that. But what I found is when I put the gate on here and I could hear it leaking, I left the Super Leak Tester 3000 connected to it, and then I reefed on it, and the spanner moved like literally a millimeter, if that. It just went, and the leak stopped straight away. So I'm not still convinced that it didn't sound like it was a huge leak, but it might be enough, I guess, to do it. But I used the Leak Tester 3000 on the pressure sensor, and it held basically exactly what the gauge said for, you know, 5 minutes or whatever. So I don't think, I'm hoping it's not the sensor. I'll bring a spare, I have a spare sensor there anyway, so I'll bring that. But yeah, it is what it is. Now, what I also noticed when I tested the bottom port is that just there on the shaft, it's just got like a tiny little leak, and I googled it, and yeah, it's people are saying it's common. They normally sort of just leak through there. So I don't know if anyone else has got their own leak tester and tested this stuff and found like the tiniest little sort of leak through the shaft or whatever. But I don't know. That it seems like that they all do them. Doesn't matter what the brand or whatever, and it's pretty common. So I'm okay with that. The leak is like nothing basically. So that's all good. Everything under here is fine, except that is my diagonal bar, and that has come loose. So what the diagonal bar does is it basically keeps the diff where it's meant to be in the car. So while you have your 4-link, while you have your anti-roll bar, and while you have your coilovers, that diagonal bar is what keeps the diff centered. So if that wasn't there, the diff would essentially do this. Back and forward, back and forward. So really, very lucky that that didn't come out or fall out or anything, because that would have definitely been absolutely no good. So, oh yeah, and the only other thing is, I don't know when this happened. China's finest here, but my shock sensor has broken. So it's not under any cross load or anything. And this is at full extension now, basically, for the shocks. And as you can see, it can keep on going a lot more. So I don't know when this actually broke, because all my data is perfect in terms of, you know, we did 5 runs, and I have 5 full runs of data of that rear shock sensor working. So I think what I might do, because I'm not going to get one of these in time, is I'll probably just grab it and I'll just weld it here. I think I'll just weld another. I'll weld a nut on it, or re-thread it or something, and yeah, just send it again and see how we go. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the chassis stuff. What I've done since then is what you would have seen off the line is the car was obviously sort of going to the right. So I've been talking with my mate Mike over in WA, who knows more about race car setup and tuning than I'll ever know, that's for sure. So it's always handy to have someone in your corner that knows what the hell they're doing, and he's certainly that. So Just looking at some of the corner weights of this thing, the corner weighting of this car is horrendous. So we're going to sort that out. Going to do some other stuff with getting it more aggressive in the forelink so it'll separate even easier. Going to raise the front to transfer some more weight to the back. So I'm going to go out to Shockworks probably this week, and we're going to fit some longer springs to the front to try and get some more front ride height and probably lower the back a bit. And then also make some bar changes on the forelink to get to separate even easier. So that sort of covers most of that stuff off. Everything else was all fine there. Now, the last thing that we need to talk about is obviously before we look at the data and talk about what changes we might make, is the trans brake situation. So the trans brake works absolutely mint here in terms of building boost pretty quickly too. It's not bad. I mean, I wouldn't say super quick, but within 8 seconds, basically, I'm up on whatever I want, sort of on the two-step here. Now, where I am, I think it's about 1,000 foot above sea level, if that. And I probably didn't test it when it's been super hot. That the engine also won't have been ridiculously heat soaked when I'm testing in the garage as well. But out at Heathcote, it's close to 1,000 foot above sea level, which means the air density, everything's not as good. We use the draggy on the weekend as well. Luke's got a draggy, and the draggy will give you like some information on acceleration rates, and that we got that in the data as that anyway. But it had, I guess, what they approximate its DA, which is a density altitude, and the DA was like 2,200 foot. So anyone knows drag racing knows that's horrendous. That's absolutely terrible. So remedy for this is it's going to need nitrous. So I knew I was going to have to run the gas anyway if I wanted to run like a competition thing, Jamboree or whatever. That was a given. So that's why the nitrous is on the car and it's in there. We knew that was reality. But I thought maybe just for testing at Heathcote with the dumps, it would have been fine. And we tested the dumps the other day, and the difference between the dumps and not was half a second, if that, in spooling. So it went from like 8.5 seconds to 8 seconds to hit the same kind of target sort of thing. So it wasn't massive. And the problem is they just don't make torque. They do not make low down torque to just bring them up to push them through the converter and start making it. So the converter is a torque multiplier. It needs torque in to multiply it out. Nothing's coming in, nothing's going to happen. And unfortunately, these engines with massive turbos on them just don't make torque. So let's go check out the trans fluid, and next week we'll definitely have some fun getting up on the gas. I didn't want to do it at the track, even though it's all there. I've even got it programmed in the PDM. I've actually got the nitrous solenoids, just the Deutsch plug unplugged, so it's not working, but everything is right. I didn't want to do it there just because I've never tested the nitrous here on the two-step, and I didn't want it to be not right and have an intake backfire and launch the intake pipe into the stratosphere while we were doing some testing. So got some great data, but let's have a look at the trans fluid, and then we'll review each pass. All right, so I was looking at this fluid last night when it was being dropped, and I'm like, oh no, it still looks pretty red. It doesn't look too bad. I didn't see any metallic-y stuff or whatever coming in it. I put it in a clear container, and I'm like, oh no, that does look a bit darker. But maybe that's okay. I couldn't really remember. It looks a bit lighter here on the edge. Maybe that's okay. And then I poured some new fluid into this container, and I said, oh my, okay. So this fluid is well and truly cooked. And yeah, that's just through excessive heat. So, it's good that when I was looking through here and, when I was being dropped, it didn't look metallic-y or whatever. So what I will do is I'll put that through a strainer basically when I'm pouring into another container and have a good hard look at it, and we'll see if there is any debris in there. But from what I remember, I didn't look in it. The plug on the bottom of the Hughes transmission's like magnetic, and there was nothing on that. And this is actually the first time I've dumped the trans fluid in it. So this is a brand new fresh transmission. You'd be expecting something, and there was a little bit of dust on it, but brand new trans is always going to have some stuff on it as components bedded in that. So Yeah, definitely need to change the trans fluid. And yeah, this is the reason why we need to put the gas on it, because I mean, it was ludicrous how long I was staying on the brake. But, you know, at that point, just needed the data and needed to understand, you know, trying to get off the line. And yeah, I guess now it's time to go through each and every pass and have a look at what happened and what we need to do in the future to make the car go better. All right, so let's look at some of this data right now. I'll just start off with the first pass. You can see here, if anyone's not familiar with the Fuel Tech data logger, able to put in your incremental times, so you can see exactly what's where and where. So 0 time is exactly when the trans brake is released, which is great. And then yeah, you can see all the incrementals based on the time slip that you get. I did do 4 passes. I've only got 4. I did 5 passes. I've only got 4 of them up here. The 4th pass was no trans brake, or wouldn't come up on the converter, and I left the burnout mode on, so it had like, I think 10 pound, 15 pound of boost or something. So we'll just put that one in the bin and live to fight another day. Some of the data I've got up here on the screen is, you can see, I'll get rid of some of this and go through it bit by bit because it's very messy. We've got our EGT here and here. And what you can see here is that they're actually, wherever I put the cursor, that's where the numbers will change. You know, you remember from the dyno, we were 100, 120 degrees separation. And what you can see here is we're basically, what's that, like, you know, 17 degrees there. So the EGTs are significantly closer now for sure, which is great. So I'll get those out the way, but O2, what you can see here is that this is my, I think this was the 20 PSI tune-up. Yep, so we've got manifold pressure here, 20 PSI, 20, 23 or whatever. When I was on the dyno, we did one pull at, I think we did one pull at like 16 pound of boost just to make sure it worked, and it did. Up the boost to 20 pound, I did one rip, was incredibly rich, and I just said, I'm moving on. I'm going straight to 20, 25 pound because I'm never going to be running 20 pound at the track, so I don't really care. We ran 20 pound at the track, obviously here, and it was incredibly rich. As you can see, like in this part here, you know, we're almost 20% richer off target than we should be. So did some fuel trims on here for the next pass and that, but I'll get rid of O2 as well. And what you can sort of see that remains here is we've got an RPM trace, so it's engine RPM. We have drive shaft RPM, which is the sensor that's on the right here on the yoke on the diff, and then we have acceleration G-forces. So this essentially, you know, I'll leave engine RPM anyway. TPS, you can see here, I had to pedal it here, and all this stuff lines up. So you can see that there's a big dip in G-force. There's a dip in engine RPM, and you can see right here also when I've lifted, there's a spike in drive shaft RPM. So all that sort of stuff combined tells you what happened. So, and you can hear it also on the video, but there's basically three sort of things here that'll tell you exactly what happened. So what happened here clearly is we broke traction. You know, the tires broke loose. So drive shaft RPM spikes because the tires turning. I've got off the throttle because I've heard the tire turning, and then the car stopped accelerating forward because the wheels are spinning, and I've stopped accelerating. So you know, they're not doing anything. You can see here off the hit, you know, this was with no burnout. It's like 1.65 G. Now, if it sort of maintained that, that's, you know, it's going all right. But you can see as soon as you can see the drive shaft take it, and then you see the curve is very, it's pretty high, and G-force is going down because you can see it on the video and that too. It turned the tire. So what's happened then is the tires. What you'll see throughout this run too is that I never lifted. Like if I put the TPS trace back up here, You can see I haven't lifted here, but it's turned the tyre. Now, the data shows it's turned the tyre, but I didn't get off the throttle. So then it's turning it. There's not a lot of power. You can see here that I've let go of the trans brake and RPM's not even rising. And in fact, it's dropped a bit because the converter's grabbed it and engine's trying to accelerate, but there's not enough load yet and power basically to pull straight through up to where we want to go. So you can see, yeah, it's spun the tyres, drive shafts spiked a bit, acceleration's down, and now right here you see the drive shaft RPM drop again and acceleration go up. The tyres gripped again, and we're accelerating. And here, you know, where the acceleration curve's diving down again because it's just not accelerating that fast, essentially. You know, you can see we're at 6,000 RPM. It's just crawling, basically. It's building. It's building to where it needs to go. As you can see, you know, it's getting up here, but it's just not doing it at a great rate of knots. And if we go to the O2 sensor, you can see, you know, we're not making horsepower because we were so rich. We just stopped making power, essentially. And then it got to the point here at about 7,700 RPM and it broke traction again. And yeah, I got off the throttle that time, obviously, because it was significant enough. RPMs dropped way down. I'd say I've clicked second gear here as well at the same time that it's happened. Definitely out of practice, that's for sure. But yeah, I've clicked second gear, and then throughout the rest of the run, you can see that the drive shaft trace keeps on climbing up. But what you'll see is if we go now from this sort of point onwards to that's where I would have got off the throttle, you can see the drive shaft curve is very lumpy in parts, and you can see acceleration is also lumpy. Listening back on the video, it sounds like the car was turning the tyre just slightly. Like it was, it just wasn't, it was the first part of the day. I mean, they've had the guys out doing all the track work for, you know, over a month. Track hasn't really been raced on the month. They had the Sportsman Day the day before, but, you know, this is a radial tyre car. It needs a decent amount of rubber being down and a decent amount of prep to work all the way down. And this data sort of tells me that, you know, it was, you know, the tyre was fighting the track a lot of the way down, you know, but it was, you know, accelerating still okay, but yeah, it's just really low. The RPM's really low there. Something that I've noticed now is that because this converter's so tight, it looks like the pull down on the converter, on the shift at lower RPM, at that like if I'm shifting it too low with not enough load on it, was like 1,400 plus RPM. So I'd say our converter, you know, pull down between gears is probably going to be about, you know, maybe 1,100, 1,200 RPM or something, which means it's pretty tight, which means my shifting will have to be absolutely on point. So if my red line's like 9,500 RPM, and this is the hard part and why so many people use like a CO2 sort of solenoid to automatically shift the shifter, is that I have to work out what the lag is between when I hit the shifter and then that shift actually occurs. And I have to time that with based on, you know, engine RPM, and also that point after, you know, 8,000 sort of RPM is when the engine will be zinging and it'll actually really rapidly accelerate. So, yeah, it's going to take a lot more practice. It may end up being something where, to get consistency, I may end up putting like a shifter on this. And depending on what the start line's like, I may put, you know, CO2 or compressed air boost control on this thing too. So I think that's enough for the first pass. We go to the second one. So you can see here that it was closer. This spike here that's lean is because it hit the limiter. You can see how rapidly it raised in RPM. So in, what's that? So in half a second, not even half a second, I mean, it sort of looks like it spun the tyre a little bit based on the drive shaft RPM, but in in basically a quarter of a second, it went from 8,000 RPM to 9,500. So, yeah, it's when it accelerates, it sort of takes off. But again, EGT is very close, so they're fine. So, and they're, I drove this one out to just past the 660 foot, and we're in the mid 600, low 700s, and 31 pounder boost. Still rich here is 3,195 versus 3,5, so 7-8% rich there, which means we already know from the dyno what happened. The difference between like 3.1 and 3.5 air fuel ratio was a couple of hundred horsepower. So definitely that was the first time at the track on that kind of boost. You can see the wastegate target and pressure here. You can see it really laggy here, and we'll talk about this in a second, like why it took so long to get up. You can see sort of hints here that there might have been a leak or something not right. Like it got up to the target, then it dropped, and then it had to go up to the target again, and then it dropped again. And yeah, and you can see then it sort of held the target, which was steady boost, which is good. But yeah, these, had I been looking at this during, when I was looking at the car, this is something I would have been able to look at and go, that's not right. That should be holding the target here all the way. So what's going on here? And I probably could have caught this issue on the second pass, but man, there was a lot of stuff going on, I tell you what. All right, if we look at acceleration G-force, you'll see here also boost. We've basically got none. We've let go of the trans brake and we've only got 3 pound. Why? Well, if you have a look at RPM here, it's 4,000. This is where it, I just didn't build boost, and I just let go of the trans brake and just rolled it out basically. And then you can see the ramp curve of boost loading, boost loading, boost loading, and then boom, all of a sudden we've gone from here at 3 seconds, and then by just over 4.25 seconds, we've gone from 4 pound to 31 pound like that. So what happens there is, yeah, you can see that the drive shaft was building, and then all of a sudden it spikes there. And I'm sure if we go to acceleration, you'll see there's a dip here. So you can see the dip there corresponds with the spike. Another dip corresponds with the spike up. Another spike up, a dip. And yeah, the other dip here is because I've clicked a gear. So you can see here, this would have been boom, click second. And then I think I pedaled it here, did I? Yeah, so I got off the throttle. I mean, this is the sort of thing that all this data will tell you. You don't really need to even have TPS traces. You just know from the run what's happened. So I know here is where I click from first to second. Here is where I click from second to third. And you can see here what the problem is. 8495, so 8,500 RPM, I've clicked from second to third, and it's dropped to 7291, so 73. So it's it's basically pulled the engine down about 1,200 RPM, and it's 7,200 RPM is way too low to be pulled down. You can see it just basically held that RPM almost, just nothing. It's not, it hasn't made, that's not in its peak sort of area and that, and it's just drove out. I mean, it's only to just past the midway between maybe about 800 foot mark or something, but we need to be, this needs to be revved out to up to here to 90, low 9,000s, 9250, whatever, and then we click it, and then it'll pull it down to say maybe 8,000 RPM, and instead of starting all the way down here, we'll be starting back right up here and then climbing slowly down to the finish line. So overall, this pass, again, you can see exactly what happened. Again, there's still more spikes in the drive shaft RPM here. Here's where, I mean, here you can even see the engine RPM. We can see how laggy it is here in terms of that, but you can see there how big so this has basically turned the tyre harder than it had previously, right here at the just after like 750 foot mark or something like that. So yeah, we're making some power, and unfortunately, yeah, our chassis setup, and the track just wasn't there to hold it through the whole lot. So, right, so moving on to pass number 3. All right, so let's go with pass number 3. You can see here the map is oscillating. You can see the air-fuel ratio is sort of oscillating as well, and that's because this wastegate pressure sensor was also oscillating. So our boost was going up and down, it's going a bit erratic. What you can see in this pass is first gear, click, second gear, boom, third gear straight away. So it went from straight first to third, and I think that's because what I've done is, instead of punching the shifter, I've grabbed the shifter and pushed it forward. And when I've done that, I've pulled the lever. So the lever locks it into the gate. So I've released that and gone boof, straight from first to third. So even with that, you still can't go to neutral, which is why it's the clean neutral there, which is why I didn't go further than third at least. But that's just driver error. But yeah, you can see here, this was, I think, was this the fastest pass or first pass? Can't remember. Let's have a look. Never went to 660 on that one. I think this was pretty much the fastest pass for the day. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, you can see here that obviously with all the boost going in and out, you can sort of see it tracing with the RPM too. So, but just super lazy because I clicked third straight away. You know, we got to the 660 foot mark and we're doing what are we doing here? 7,200 RPM. You know, it's yeah, we pulled the converter right down from, shifted at, you know, 8 grand, which is, you know, 1,000 RPM too early. I'm not sure if, no, we never got off the throttle here at all. But you can see some drive shaft spikes in that here too. EGTs at the end of this run, sort of 1,000 foot, we were still on it, you know, 700, 740 within 40, they're pretty good. O2 was pretty good as well. So, you know, this sort of, and you can see the map, because that, because this wastegate pressure's, I assume it was leaking, you know, this is where the target was meant to be. This is how much boost we were meant to be running. And look how far off, this is what was getting put on top of the dome to add essentially to that 15, 14 PSI spring. So, you know, we're adding here, anywhere from like 5 to 6 or whatever PSI on top of that. And, you know, that's why we're only running 19 pound of boost, because, you know, 5 plus 14 is 19. So let's go on to the 5th pass. And again, this was, by now, I think the leak was getting even worse. So you can see here, the boost by this time we're down to, if I move all these out the way, you can see here we're down to like 17 pound of boost after we changed the third, because, you know, the leak's getting worse and the load wasn't there because we shifted way too low. So you can see here where we've shifted. This is first gear, all through second, and then here second we've shifted 7,700 RPM and it's pulled it down to 6.3. So just got to get used to getting comfortable with driving, and then got to get comfortable looking at the dash. Let's run over some of the stuff that we've probably got planned for the next time, what we need to change. All right, so that's it for the data part and some of the debrief of what went wrong and what went right. But some of the stuff we're going to change, we need to change before we go out again, are obviously our fluids, because we absolutely cooked that trans fluid. I might put some fluid in there and flush out the other stuff too, because all that's going to be in the converter, all that burnt old crap as well. So we want as much of that out as we can. So we might do a bit of a flush. One thing, it's going to be hard to sort of see, I'll see if we can see it there, but our steering wheel was crooked as hell. I thought this thing was actually aligned. You can see there that this wheel is pointed almost straight on, a bit of slight maybe toe in or turn in if you say, and this wheel is pointing out that way. So yeah, that definitely needs some attention. Obviously got to sort out that dump pipe, because that's no good. Got a beautiful, nice car here wrapped by Vintage Customs, and that don't look too neat, so we'll fix that. We've sorted out the wastegates. I've lost a wastegate spring, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the 10 psi springs in, because what we're going to do is we're going to raise the two-step limiter to like about 6750, maybe even 7000 RPM. And I want to leave with more RPM and drive out of the hole, but I don't want to do it with lots of power. So the boost is what's going to make the power, not the RPM, so to speak. So I want to limit as much boost as I can on the start line on the two-step, and I'm not sure if it's going to be able to do that, essentially, which is the reason why a lot of people run compressed air and CO2, is so you can run, like, say, a 3-pound spring in it, and you can, use, compressed air or CO2 to dial in whatever boost you exactly want on the start line, and then also down the strip. So I don't like the idea of having another bottle and another product need to service. So I've seen a lot of people starting to run with onboard little mini air compressors, so to speak, and that kind of setup I think would work really well for this. So when you're racing by yourself, it's really hard to remember all this kind of stuff. Like from now, one of the changes we're also going to make is we've got to turn this nitrous on to get this thing up to stop boiling the fluid, so we can actually leave the line also anyway. But that's a bottle I have to remember to turn on. It's a switch I have to remember on the keypad to turn on the nitrous. I have to remember to open the bottle. CO2 bottle is not something I want to have to rely on to remember to do, because, all these things, there's plenty of stuff going on and you can easily just forget these kind of things. So, yeah, I might look at the compressed air thing after we have a go of just working on with the nitrous and some spring pressure and seeing what we can do. See, the issue with just running manifold pressure for your boost control is generally whatever your spring pressure is in the wastegate, you'll only normally be able to run around about double or a little bit over, just over double in terms of total boost. So while we have 15-pound springs in there, we know when we're at the dyno, we're able to run 35-pound of boost. So that worked out quite well. So that's, that's over double. It's like 2.5 times or whatever, so to speak, almost. So, but now if we run 10 PSI springs, well, 2.5 times that is 25 pound. And we want to run 30 plus, So, well, it'd be great to get the car down the track on 25 pound and that, we want to run this car balls out every time we're taking it out. So, we're going to take it out with the 10-pound springs. I'll even take 7-pound springs to see if it, that helps, if we are blowing the tires off or if it's still too much power. And the other thing that we're going to do in terms of chassis setup will be, so obviously you can see here, we've got about 3 inches of droop in the front end. So what we're going to try and do is really tighten up that. I can't extend the front shocks anymore. I want to get more ride height in the front. So some of the suggestions Mike had for me was raise the front here so it's already transferring weight to the rear, lower the rear a bit, so essentially it's going to sit a little bit raked like that, and then also change the bar angle on the rear as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the shocks out and front shocks out and take them to Shockworks and look at just these front shocks first, maybe tighten up a little bit in the front end. They say without travel limiters, they'll be able to get these shocks set up for, next to no droop, which is fine. And then the next part will be changing the bar angle. So changing these bars to be even more aggressive. So this bar here will get, I'll raise it up another hole here. So it'll be up a little bit more. And this bar here, I'll lower the top one up there, down one hole. So what that'll mean is that that there'll be even more anti-squat. We'll raise the instant center and bring it back further to the diff. So essentially what that'll do will mean it should be able to separate a lot easier. And that separation, as well as the extra weight over the rear, corner weighting the car better, and the weight transfer from the front to the rear better as well, hopefully means it really plants the tyre a lot better and a lot harder. And that means when we hit that tyre hard, actually leaving this time at 6,700 or 7,000 or whatever it's going to need, that it sticks and it goes. So you saw in those videos that even though we were just crawling out of the line, we still spun the tyre a bit. Now, I mean, it has to do with how good the track is and that too, but you know, we have to do our job and set up the chassis right as well anyway. So that's pretty much everything we need to do for this now. So I think next video is, yeah, we will sometime during the week, next week, have a bit of a play with the nitrous. So we might do a bit of video on the difference between the trans brake with dumps, and then maybe all three, the nitrous, trans brake and dumps at once, and see how they all go. Until then, it's been fun. We can't wait to get back out there again, but thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.